The next morning, Sung Min stirred beneath the thick covers, groaning as the pounding in his head reminded him of just how much he drank the night before. Ugh, he sat up slowly, massaging his temples. His throat was dry, and his mouth tasted bitter. But as he blinked the fuzziness from his eyes, the memories came rushing back, Dae-hyun's voice telling him Ji-yun was safe. A strange warmth bloomed in his chest before he quickly slammed the door on it. No. Focus, he muttered to himself, his jaw tightening. You have spent years planning this moment. Don't get soft now. But deep down, he couldn't lie to himself. There was a flicker of relief. He went to the living room, still swimming in these thoughts when a sharp knock interrupted the stillness. A palace messenger bowed low as he stepped in. A letter, my lord. From General Hong Jae. You are to attend an urgent council meeting this morning regarding Prince Kyong Hun, your daughter Jialmi. Sung Min's brow furrowed as he took the letter, breaking the seal with a swift tug. The messenger left and his eyes scanned the parchment. Unauthorized wedding, he echoed under his breath. Then the words sank in, Ji-yun married the crown prince. He stared at the letter, stunned for a moment, unable to tell if he should laugh, cry, or rage. His grip on the parchment tightened. Before he could fully process it, Dae-hyun entered, a knowing look on his face. You're up earlier than I expected. Sung Min held up the letter wordlessly. Dae-hyun sighed. I was going to tell you. But you were too drunk to understand a word last night. He actually did it, Sung Min muttered, eyes fixed on the far wall. That fool of a boy really got the crown prince to fall for him. There was no pride in his voice, but no mockery either. Only disbelief. And something else, something Dae-hyun could hear beneath the surface, a flicker of unease. You shouldn't be surprised, it's what you trained him for, Dae-hyun said softly, watching his old friend closely. Sung Min exhaled slowly, resting the letter on the table. It's not just that. I didn't think things would move this quickly. Now everything's falling into place, and I'm not sure I'm ready. Dae-hyun's expression softened. You're nervous, about seeing him. The king. Sung Min didn't deny it. He rubbed the back of his neck, standing stiffly by the window. It's been so many years, he said. I doubt he'd recognize me. Not after what he did to my family. And besides, his voice lowered. He probably still believes I died that day. Dae-hyun stepped closer, his tone gentle. Let's hope it stays that way. You've come too far to let your identity slip now. There was a long silence. Sung Min stared out the window, watching palace banners flutter in the distance. I've waited a lifetime for this moment. I won't let fear ruin it. Dae-hyun gave a small, crooked smile. Just don't let hatred ruin it either. Sung Min turned, finally meeting his gaze. If you're asking me to show mercy. I can't promise that. I'm not asking for mercy, Dae-hyun said. I'm asking for clarity. Sung Min said nothing more. He walked back to his room, picked out a formal robe and began dressing, his movements slow but certain. Whatever happened at the palace today, there would be no turning back. In the great hall of the palace, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The grand double doors opened one after the other as ministers filed in, their robes rustling, faces set in practiced masks of decorum. The king and queen sat tall and silent on their thrones, their expressions unreadable, but their eyes sharp, darting from one official to the next. Whispers curled through the air like smoke, swirling around the unspoken reason they were all summoned, the prince's scandalous marriage. Meanwhile, Ji-yun stirred beneath the covers, blinking himself awake to find Kyong Hun sitting by his side, gazing at him with quiet concern. You're awake, Kyong Hun said softly, his voice like a warm breeze. Ji-yun gave a faint nod and smiled. I feel better. Just a little tired still. Kyong Hun held out a small porcelain bowl filled with crushed herbs. Drink this. It'll help with your strength. Ji-yun took the bowl and drank without complaint. He handed it back, wiping a bit of bitterness from his lips with a clean cloth. Kyong Hun set it aside and turned back to him. Let me help you wash. You shouldn't strain yourself. Ji-yun blinked, caught off guard. I can do it. Kyung Hun was already undoing the ties on his robe with gentle, practiced fingers. I won't hurt you, he murmured. I'll be careful around the wound. Ji-yun flushed but said nothing. He let the layers fall away until he sat bare, heart thudding in his chest, not out of shame, but from the intensity in Kyung Hun's gaze. Then, without warning, Kyung Hun scooped him up, cradling him like something precious. Their eyes met, and for a second, neither said a word. The bath was already drawn, warm and scented faintly with mountain herbs. Kyung Hun carefully lowered Ji-yun into the water. He adjusted his grip so the wound stayed dry, using a clean cloth to wipe down Ji-yun's back and arms. The heat of the bath fogged the air between them. Ji-yun looked up through the steam. Join me. Kyung Hun hesitated only a second before he began removing his own clothes, every movement deliberate, slow, almost reverent. He stepped into the bath and eased down beside Ji-yun, pulling him gently into his arms. Water lapped softly around them. Ji-yun leaned into him, resting his head against his shoulder. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to, Kyung Hun said. I'm your husband now. Ji-yun smiled faintly, unsure if he wanted to laugh or cry at how surreal that still sounded. It still feels like a dream. Kyung Hun brushed a kiss across his lips, slow and warm, lingering. Then let's not wake up yet. They sat there for a while, arms wrapped around each other in silence, letting the warmth sink into their bones. After some time, Ji-yun spoke again. Do you regret it? Marrying me like that, against the court, against your parents? Kyung Hun looked down at him, brow furrowed with a kind of gentle certainty. I'd do it again. 1,000 times over. You're not a mistake, Ji-yun. You never were. Ji-yun's throat tightened, emotion catching him off guard. Even with everything that's coming? Kyung Hun nodded. Especially because of everything that's coming. Besides, marrying Min Seo wasn't an option. If I did, the entire kingdom would be doomed. Kyung Hun continued. There's going to be a meeting this morning. The council has summoned us for questioning. Ji-yun pulled back slightly, looking up. I figured as much. I expected it, Kyung Hun said, brushing a damp strand of hair from Ji-yun's forehead. Especially after what we did. The ministers won't take kindly to us bypassing palace protocol. Minister Jin Suk will lead the charge, no doubt, and he won't stop until he turns everyone against us. Ji-yun's fingers tightened slightly around Kyung Hun's arm. He didn't speak, but Kyung Hun noticed the shift in his eyes, the flicker of fear. There's more, Kyung Hun added carefully. Your father, he's been summoned too. Ji-yun went completely still. Kyung Hun studied him. You've been quiet about him. I know it's not my place to press, but I've always wondered. What kind of man would willingly make his son live as a woman for so long? Why would he agree to that? Ji-yun's throat went dry. 100 memories flashed behind his eyes, some tender, some painful, all of them tangled. Maybe now was the time. Maybe Kyung Hun deserved the truth. Ji-yun started, swallowing hard. There's something you should know about him. About me. About why I had to. Just then, the door creaked open. Tae-jin burst in, breathless, clearly in a rush. But the second he spotted them in the bath, still in each other's arms, he froze mid-step like a startled animal. Oh. I'm sorry. I forgot you weren't alone. I didn't mean to intrude. Kyung Hun let out a small sigh, while Ji-yun chuckled softly, his tension momentarily eased. It's all right, Tae-jin, Kyung Hun said with a faint smile. We'll be out shortly. Tae-jin quickly backed out, red-faced, and waited for them in the outer room. Once dressed in formal attire, Jiun and Kyong Hun stepped out, a quiet sense of unity between them. Tae-jin straightened the moment he saw them. The meeting has already begun. The ministers are entering the council chamber as we speak. You'll be called in soon. He paused, glancing between them with a mix of loyalty and concern. I have to warn you, he said, voice low. Minister Jin Suk, and his brother-in-law, Jin Moo, they're dangerous men. They're already stirring up support. You need to be careful. Whatever they have planned, it won't be good. Kyung Hun's face turned serious. Have the captured assassins been interrogated yet? He asked, his voice low but firm. Tae-jin shook his head. Not yet. They're being held under heavy guard, awaiting the king's orders. Kyung Hun's jaw tightened slightly. We can't wait too long. I'm certain Minister Jin Suk was behind the attempt on our lives. But accusations alone won't be enough, we need to make him squirm. If we can get even one of those men to speak in front of the court, in front of him, it'll shake his grip and divert the attention from our marriage. Tae-jin nodded, understanding the weight of the request. You want the confession to happen publicly? Yes, Kyung Hun said. Right there in the council hall. I want to see the look on Jin Suk's face when the truth is laid bare and he can't run from it. Tae-jin straightened, already calculating. I'll see to it. I'll speak with the interrogators and have the prisoners prepared. We'll make sure it happens at the right moment. Kyung Hun clapped a hand on his shoulder. I trust you, brother. Tae-jin turned and exited, already moving with purpose. A few moments later, a soft knock came at the door, and a young maid stepped inside, eyes lowered in deference. Your Highness, the council is waiting. You've been summoned to the palace hall. Kyung Hun gave a short nod. Thank you. As the maid bowed and left, Kyung Hun turned to Ji Yun, who stood quietly, trying to steady his breath. His eyes darted for a moment, betraying the nerves behind his otherwise calm expression. Kyung Hun reached out and gently took Ji Yun's hand in his own. Their fingers laced together, grounding them both. Are you ready? He asked softly, looking directly into Ji Yun's eyes. Ji Yun hesitated for just a second, then gave a small, determined nod. I am. Whatever happens in there, Kyung Hun said, we face it together. Don't forget that, okay? Ji Yun's lips curved in the faintest smile. I won't. Hand in hand, they turned toward the doors and stepped out, leaving behind the safety of their chamber and walking straight into the heart of the storm. Inside the grand palace hall, the king and queen sat tall and poised on their thrones, observing as the ministers spoke, waiting for Minister Jin Suk to arrive. Minister Jin Suk and his brother-in-law, Minister Jin Moo, finally stepped in. Their movements were slow and deliberate, their robes sweeping confidently behind them as they took their places. A few other ministers trailed after them, all clearly aligned, shoulders squared, faces stiff with pride. The smug glances they exchanged were not subtle. King Jang's face remained unreadable, but the queen cast a quiet glance at her husband. She didn't need to say anything, they both knew exactly what Jin Suk was planning. Once all had gathered, the ministers bowed and offered their formal greetings. Your Majesties, they echoed in unison. King Jang nodded curtly, his tone cool as he began, let us get to the matter at hand. Tell me, what do you all propose regarding Crown Prince Kyung Hun's recent marriage, which, as we all know, was conducted without palace sanction? The words had barely left his mouth before Minister Jin Suk stepped forward, voice already laced with contempt. Your Majesty, he said, bowing slightly, with all due respect, this so-called union should be annulled immediately. It was carried out in secrecy, far from the sacred rites of the palace, and without your blessing. Not only does it disregard tradition, but it defies the law. Jin Moo nodded in agreement, chiming in, the rules are clear. The crown prince cannot marry without royal ceremony and official approval. This, impulsive marriage is invalid. A few of their loyal supporters murmured in agreement. But before the echo could settle, one man, Minister Park, cleared his throat and stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "That's not entirely fair," he said. "Lady Jiaomi, regardless of how the wedding occurred, was already chosen as the royal bride. The ceremony may not have been traditional, but the pairing was already decreed." A ripple of disagreement spread across the room. Ministers from both sides raised their voices, descending into a polite yet heated chaos. Jin Suk raised his hand and spoke above the din, "And what of the prince himself? He's unfit to be crown prince. He tramples palace law, acts without counsel, and now, he brings shame upon the royal bloodline by wedding someone in secrecy, in direct violation of palace honor." "That is a bold accusation," Minister Park snapped. "An accurate one," Jin Suk countered, eyes narrowed. "A true heir to the throne would uphold the palace legacy, not behave like a rogue." The queen's fingers curled slightly on the armrest of her throne. But the king remained still, his face composed as one of his advisors leaned toward him, whispering something discreetly into his ear. King Jiang's gaze shifted for a beat. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he gave a signal. The advisor stepped back and spoke clearly, "Your Majesty, Lord Sung Min, Lady Jiaomi's father, has arrived outside the hall." King Jiang raised his hand calmly. "Bring him in." Murmurs in the hall stilled, heads turning slightly at the unexpected development. Jin Suk's lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes narrowing. He didn't like surprises, especially ones that involved men he couldn't control. As the guards moved to open the grand doors, the air shifted. Everyone waited. The heavy doors of the palace hall creaked open, and all heads turned. Sungmin stepped inside, his posture straight, his face composed like a man carved from stone. Beside him walked Dae Hyun, quiet and watchful. Their footsteps echoed through the hall like a drumbeat announcing something, someone, important. The chatter that had filled the room moments earlier vanished. The ministers stilled. The queen sat a little straighter. Even Minister Jin Suk narrowed his eyes. Sungmin approached the throne, hiding the storm churning in his chest. Hatred, long buried but never forgotten, simmered just beneath his skin as he bowed deeply before the king and queen. He could feel King Jiang's gaze studying him. King Jiang tilted his head slightly, fingers tapping against the armrest. "You look familiar," he murmured, almost to himself. But then he shook the thought away and straightened. "Lord Sungmin," he said more formally, "thank you for joining us. Given the sudden circumstances between our children, I would like to hear your opinion. What do you make of this unexpected marriage between the crown prince and your daughter?" Sungmin lifted his head and spoke with a calm, regal air that belied his merchant status. "Your Majesty," he said, voice firm yet respectful, "it is clear the marriage must have occurred under extraordinary circumstances. But I believe it was not without merit. I brought my daughter to the palace upon receiving your invitation to present her in the competition for the crown princess title." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "She was deemed worthy because her beauty is known far and wide, yes, but more than that, because of her grace, intelligence, and skill. Qualities which, I believe, outshone many of the noble ladies who also vied for the title." The ministers shifted, murmurs rippling through the room like wind brushing over silk. Jin Suk roared, eyes blazing. "Enough," he barked, voice echoing through the chamber. "How dare you speak so highly of your daughter as though she is superior to mine? She is the daughter of a merchant. A merchant. While my daughter, Min Seo, was born of noble blood. She was trained from birth to be a princess, her place was destined." The air crackled with tension, but Sungmin simply turned his gaze to Jin Suk, calm and composed. A faint, mocking smile tugged at his lips. "And yet," he said smoothly, "the crown prince chose my daughter." Jin Suk's face turned a dangerous shade of red. Sungmin went on, undeterred. "You speak of nobility, Minister Jin Suk, but in my years as a traveler, I have dined with kings, advised emperors, and traded with nations your kind only hear about in stories. You measure worth by bloodline, I measure it by ability. Then he leaned forward ever so slightly, voice dropping but still loud enough for the room to hear, and if it's numbers you prefer, my net worth exceeds the combined wealth of everyone in this room, even the king. He bowed. Gasps broke out like firecrackers. The room fell into stunned silence. Jiun looked like he might explode. His lips trembled with fury, his hand clenched at his side as if trying not to strike something, or someone. The ministers on his side avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with the humiliation burning bright in the room. Dae-hyun, standing behind Sungmin, glanced around, a subtle smirk dancing in his eyes. He knew his friend had just made his entrance, and what an entrance it was. The queen whispered something into the king's ear, and even King Jang's brows raised in faint surprise. For a merchant, Sungmin carried himself with the dignity of a noble, or perhaps something more. And Jiun had just been publicly outshone. The tension between them now sizzled so sharply, it was almost visible in the air. Sungmin's voice rang out again, slicing through the awkward silence like a sharpened blade. As for the marriage between my daughter and the crown prince, I believe the opposition to their relationship left them with no other choice but to marry in haste, he said, eyes narrowing as he looked around the hall. Especially after my daughter was kidnapped, and with assassins actively trying to end her life. Gasps rippled through the room. Ministers shifted in their seats, stealing glances at one another. Some looked down, visibly uncomfortable. Even Queen Yoon's expression tightened. Sungmin's eyes gleamed with fury. I am not just here for ceremony or formality. I am here because I want answers. Who wanted my daughter dead? Before anyone could respond, a royal guard stepped forward, announcing with a clear voice, His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince Kyong Hun, and Crown Princess Jialmi have arrived. Crown Princess. Jiun spat harshly. The grand doors opened again, and all turned as Kyong Hun entered, head high, regal and unflinching. Beside him, Ji-yun walked hand in hand with him, his gaze composed but slightly nervous, shoulders squared with quiet courage. Sungmin turned, his eyes locking with Ji-yun. For a moment, the court seemed to fade. Ji-yun's steps faltered ever so slightly when he met his father's eyes, unsure what expression he'd find. But Sungmin only gave a small nod, an acknowledgement, perhaps even a hint of pride, and Ji-yun's posture straightened again. They stopped before the king and queen. King Jang leaned forward. Crown Prince Kyong Hun, he said, this court demands an explanation. Speak now and defend your actions. Kyong Hun stepped forward, still holding Ji-yun's hand. I take full responsibility for the marriage, he began. I did it to protect Jialmi, after she was kidnapped. I couldn't risk her safety again, and making her my crown princess was the only way to shield her completely from further harm. There was a murmur of mixed reactions. Jiun immediately scoffed. And in doing so, you violated palace protocol. There are procedures for royal marriages, blessings, permissions, rights. You ignored them all. Kyong Hun didn't flinch. So we'll do another wedding, he replied coolly. A royal one, with all the traditions you crave. As many ceremonies as it takes, what matters is that we're married. And last I checked, marriages are not invalid because they happen in a rush. People celebrate their unions more than once all the time. That silenced Jiun for a beat. Then Kyong Hun's expression changed. His calm gave way to frustration, anger simmering just beneath his voice. Enough of this, he snapped, sweeping his gaze across the court. You sit here bickering about protocols and weddings, when we were nearly killed. Assassins tried to take our lives, and you care more about embroidered silk and ceremonial candles. The entire court went quiet. No one dared move. Kyong Hun's voice rose. Instead of investigating who was behind the attack, you've been focused on how to bring me down, me, your crown prince. Where is your loyalty? Where is your sense of justice? He turned sharply. Bring them in. At his command, the doors opened again. Tae-jin stepped forward, flanked by guards dragging in a group of battered, chained men. Their faces were bruised, some bloodied, and their expressions flickered between fear and defiance. The court watched in stunned silence as they were forced to kneel. Kyong Hun stepped forward, eyes locked on the man in front, the leader of the attackers. He pointed at him, voice low but powerful. You. Tell this court, who sent you. The tension in the hall became a living thing, thick, suffocating, and electric with anticipation. Jin-suk sat stiffly, the veins in his neck straining as he watched the assassin leader shift under the weight of Kyung Hun's gaze. The court was silent, eyes darting between the prince and the battered man on his knees. We were just bandits, the leader said finally, his voice hoarse. Thought you were nobles, just wanted to rob you, that's all. Kyung Hun's jaw tightened. Really? He asked coldly. Then why didn't you take a single coin? Not a jewel, not even my sword. You didn't come for riches. You came for blood. The assassin looked away. Kyung Hun stepped closer. You think you're protecting someone? You're not. If you stay silent, you die for people who won't lift a finger to save you. They will kill you and your men just to keep themselves safe. Still, the leader said nothing. You're a liability now, Kyung Hun continued, his voice low but deadly. Whoever sent you is probably already planning to silence you. Is that how you want to go out? Or do you want to save your life and finally do something that matters? The man's eyes flickered, but he remained silent, lips pressed in a hard line. Jin-suk cleared his throat and suddenly rose to his feet, voice loud and firm. Your Highness, this interrogation is going nowhere. Might I remind the court that the real issue at hand is your marriage, or lack thereof. This entire situation is unlawful and must be annulled immediately. I dare anyone to say this marriage is null and void. A voice rang out like thunder, halting the room. All heads turned at once toward the great doors. There stood a tall figure in white and gold robes, staff in hand, eyes blazing with authority. A collective gasp swept through the court. Wise One Haru, many whispered in reverence as they bowed their heads. Even King Jang stood up with wide eyes, followed by the queen. Ji Yun's mouth fell slightly open, recognition dawning on his face as his heart pounded. This was Haru, but why did he look so different? And what was he doing here? Haru strode forward with purpose, robes trailing like waves behind him. I married them myself, he declared, looking straight at the throne. The bond between them is blessed and sacred. It is valid in the eyes of the heavens and this kingdom. The court murmured in disbelief. Some bowed lower, others simply stared. Ji Yun turned to Kyung Hun in astonishment, then back at Haru. The old seer. He had spoken cryptically, smiled like he knew secrets, but Ji Yun had never guessed. He wasn't just a seer. He was the kingdom's greatest oracle. The wise one. Suddenly, all the pieces clicked. The strange way he had looked at them. The insistence on fate. The calm during chaos. Ji Yun's hands trembled slightly. He had unknowingly been blessed by one of the kingdom's most powerful figures. As silence reigned in the hall, Haru turned slowly to Jin-suk, who had paled considerably. Try to annul that, Haru said, voice soft but cutting like steel. And may the heavens judge your intentions. Jin-suk had no words, his mouth opened but nothing came out. King Jang sat down slowly, stunned but visibly moved. He exchanged a look with the queen, then nodded to his advisor. At that moment, the tide had turned. Ji Yun stood quietly, eyes on Haru as Kyung Hun reached for his hand, and he held it tight. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.